Is Flash cursed? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we're going to find out as we take a look at some of the most tragic things to happen to the hero known as the Flash. We'll be looking at not just one of the most seemingly doomed of the Flashes, Barry Allen, but also taking a look at other prominent versions of the hero such as Wally West's Flash. After all, tragedy is never mutually exclusive when it comes to heroes. It generally is something experienced almost equally throughout the medium by various heroes, even ones who share the same moniker, and especially at DC. Join me as we count down the top 10 saddest things that happened to the Flash. Get a tissue ready to mop up some of those tears, and let's sprint into it. Number 10. Barry can't go back to his timeline. While the comics have tons of tragic events when it comes to the Flash, so does the Arrowverse. Tragedy has followed Barry Allen's character there as well, and continues to haunt him constantly throughout the various seasons of the Flash. At one point, Barry creates a flashpoint when he successfully goes back in time and saves his mother Nora. This happens only after failing to do so a few times in the show. In season 3, he returns from that timeline, realizing he had to try and fix the divergent timeline that he'd created, but when he went back to fix it and then returned to the present, he realized that everything was still different from how it had originally been, and that he'd never be able to quite fix what he had done and revert the timeline back to how it was originally. In other words, he'd be stuck in a divergent timeline where everything was just a little bit different. This event not only affected the Flash, but also affected the entire Arrowverse. Number 9. The Flash lost his legs. But don't worry, only temporarily. Still, it was a pretty dark and tragic moment for Barry. This moment comes to us from issue 68 of the 2016 run of The Flash from Rebirth. Here, the villain known as the Trickster made it appear as though he had cut off Barry's legs, giving us a shocking cliffhanger ending for the final page of that issue. In issue 69, however, Barry manages to overcome what is revealed to be a momentary setback. His missing legs appear to be just a trick, and he is able to overcome his own pessimism to free himself from the trick and save the day in the end. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love us as much as we love you, be sure to show that by clicking all the things. Hit subscribe, click the like, do the comment stuff, do everything. Thank you. Number 8. Final Crisis. The tragedy of this event in regards to both Flash's Wally West and Barry Allen failing their mission set us up for one very emotional moment between Barry and Iris. During Final Crisis, Barry Allen and Wally West attempted to save everyone from Darkseid by preventing the death of Orion, but they failed. As a result, the Earth was overtaken by the anti-life equation, with everyone becoming affected by it and turning into a sad, depressed husk of their former self. Barry ends up coming across Iris, who is lost to the anti-life equation. With us believing there is likely no hope for the couple, Barry goes to kiss Iris, trying desperately to free her. Their love, combined with the Speed Force charged touch of his lips, works and Iris is freed, only highlighting though how small the glimmer of hope is in a world overrun by the anti-life equation, and how much work is still ahead. Number 7. His father's confession. Barry Allen's father Henry was wrongfully convicted of murdering his mother Nora, and it was this claim by his father, who continued to profess his innocence from the day of the murder and years afterwards, that inspired Barry to get a job within the justice system, becoming a forensic scientist for the Central City Police Department. However, after years, Henry had all but given up on the belief that he would ever be set free, and so lied to his son, confessing that he had committed the crime, when still he really hadn't. This drove Barry into a frenzy, turning his entire world upside down, and caused him to destroy his lab, becoming covered in chemicals as lightning from the storm outside crashed through his window and electrocuted him, granting him super speed and allowing him to tap into the Speed Force. This accident may have come from a moment of intense tragedy, but it would also lift Barry Allen up, turning him into the hero we have come to know as the Flash. Number 6. Reverse Flash wins. One of the saddest and most terrifying realities, of course, comes to us from the Dark Multiverse. Here we are talking about the Tales of the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint story, where Barry Allen fails to get his powers back and instead ends up frying. This allows Eobard Thawne to win the day, and so Reverse Flash ends up replacing Barry Allen as the Flash. Barry's attempt here to regain his powers instead created something new, a darker timeline, a divergence, a dark flashpoint. This version of the Flash, Thawne's version, uses his power to defeat all the heroes in the current timeline he arrives in, manipulate the President of the United States into being his puppet, and tortures the Batman of that timeline, Thomas Wayne, with the knowledge that he, Thawne, could fix the world and put it back to normal if he wanted to, but that he doesn't want to do that. He confesses that he enjoys keeping Thomas around because Batman was aware of the way things should be, but knew how hopeless fixing everything was now that Barry was dead. Of course, in the end, he does kind of fix it for Thomas because he's like, I'm gonna save his family just to see what'll happen, but it's not in a good way. It's not helping him in a good way, I don't think. Number 5. Everyone forgets Wally. This was a series of tragic moments that also ended up leading to one of the most emotionally charged moments in comic book history. After the events of Flashpoint, Wally West became trapped outside the timeline, only able to peer into it through the Speed Force. Stuck in the Speed Force, Wally ventured around Earth looking for anyone who might recognize him, but no one had any memories of the speedster, and so, alas, no one did recognize him. In the end, Wally found Barry and said his final goodbye to the seemingly confused hero, preparing himself to disappear permanently from existence. But then suddenly, Barry remembered Wally and was able to pull him back into the timeline and into existence. Not only did this moment make us all cry tears of joy at the two reconnecting, but the whole journey up to this moment was particularly sad and tragic, just tears all around. Number 4. Death of Bart Allen. Bart Allen was the time-displaced grandson of Barry Allen, who started off in the comics as Impulse before becoming the Flash sidekick Kid Flash, until he eventually took over for Wally West as the Flash. Bart died without even having superpowers, sacrificing himself to save others, as Flashes so often do. After becoming depowered, Bart pretended to still have his super speed in order to distract a group of villains known as the Rogues, long enough for his girlfriend to disarm the device that had depowered him and also threatened to blow up all of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, without the Speed Force, he was no match for them and ended up being brutally killed in the fight. His death happened in the pages of The Flash, The Fastest Man Alive in issue 13, and a funeral followed in issue 43 of Countdown. Fortunately, Bart would return to life during the events of Final Crisis. Cause you know, it's still comic books. Number 3. Death of Nora Allen. In the CW Arrowverse, we got to see Barry Allen experience his mother's death firsthand. He attempted to go back to the moment that she died during season 1 in an attempt to try and save her, but was prevented from doing so by his future self, who warned him that he basically couldn't get involved. Arriving in time but unable to do anything, he had to watch again as his mother was attacked and killed. As she lay dying, he approached her and revealed himself to be the Flash and her adult son, Barry Allen, attempting to comfort her, at least in her last few moments, by letting her know that in the future her son would grow up to be okay and her husband was also doing fine. Nora and Barry both smiled tearfully as they said their final goodbyes. This scene always makes me sad. It always makes me cry. Number 2. Heroes in Crisis. Wally was being treated at Sanctuary with other superheroes and some redeemed villains turned hero when he snapped. The strain of the new continuity which he was aware of, making him feel terribly alone, and the combination of taking a peek at the records belonging to other supers who had come through there got to him and caused him to lose control of his powers. The murder mystery story would later reveal that it was actually Wally West who was responsible for the Sanctuary massacre, and that Wally had attempted to cover up what he had done to help him buy some time to fix it. This event turned Wally into a bona fide villain in the comics, who later would have to pay for his crimes, even though they were accidental. I mean, he didn't mean to do it. Not only was this sad for Wally in the comics, but it was also a sad moment for Wally West fans everywhere. Because this was not the Wally West we wanted. We were like, we didn't ask for this Wally West. Can we get a refund? Where's Happy Wally? Number 1. New 52. One of the saddest things to have happened to Wally West, in my opinion, was the DC reset that wiped out his family. Because Wally had been pulled out of the continuity by Dr. Manhattan and then inserted back into it, he still had the memories of his New Earth life prior to New 52. He remembered his marital bliss, his children, his happy family, but now they were all remarkably missing. The love of his life, Linda Park, didn't remember who he was, and they didn't have a relationship here. Linda had her own thing kinda going on. His children were just nowhere to be found, and this actually set him down a path of trying to figure out what had happened to them. Eventually he would find his children again and save them, but Linda would prove more of a moral conundrum for him, especially as he realized that with his touch he could give people back their memories from the prior continuity. And it was actually this position of remembering everything that made Wally basically go insane and kind of prompted the events of Heroes in Crisis. While that was tragic, I think living in a displaced continuity where you feel completely out of place is even more sad. What do you think are some of the saddest moments in Flash's history? Who do you think is the most tragic of all of the Flashes? And which hero do you think has the worst luck when it comes to tragic events? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.